Service Food for Thought program every Thursday that we're having it. So just so you know, we will have Q&As at the end, but if you do have questions throughout the program, feel free to write them in the chat. We have a very special speaker with us today, Amy Kole. I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on. Hi, I'm Amy Kole, and I grew up in Savannah. I grew up going to the JEA. The Jewish community in Savannah obviously holds a very, very special place in my heart, just from my family who is a part of the circle, as well as all the friends that I've made. So I'm so excited to be here and talking to people. It's very much like combining two of my worlds. So it's very exciting. Anyways, is it okay if I share the screen now, Sunny?
Yes, please. We're excited to see it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I am here to talk to everybody about my time living abroad in Japan. Can I share this? Sorry. And I'm so sorry in advance for any technical issues I have. I'm usually very, very bad at this stuff. I don't think it's letting me share right now.
Try now.
Interesting. It's not letting me look at my screen. I can also just talk. We don't have to have images. I just thought that they would be fun, but I could spiel about this for hours too. So that's also okay. So anyway, my name is Amy Kole. As I said, I grew up in Savannah. And as you probably know by now, my job is a writer for theme parks. And I lived in Japan for 2.5 years doing that. And I know that first off, you're probably like, wait, people write theme parks? And that was something that I didn't even know about until a few years ago. So yes, and I'm going to get into that, but just a little bit more about me first so that you understand why I made the decision to work in theme parks, which might sound so bizarre to some people, and it kind of is. So first off, I grew up loving theme parks. I was a total Disney girl. I was very lucky because my mom and dad, thank you, mom and dad, took me and my brothers to Disney every chance that we had. And I would definitely say that as much as I loved Disney movies and Disney Channel, like it was really the Disney theme parks that just resonated the most with me. That was the most exciting way to experience story. And as I got a little older and I was about to graduate from college, I applied to the Disney College program and I got in, and I had no idea that it was going to completely change my life and change my career course, because I thought that I wanted to write for film and television. And then I worked at Disney and I learned about how they build their parks and how they need writers to bring these stories to life in the environment. And I was like, yes, that is like perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. It like just married two of my most favorite things. So I went on to grad school at Savannah College of Art and Design. So I got to move back to Savannah for a few years, which was very, very cool. I loved being close to family again. And I got my master's in dramatic writing. So even though my main focus in classes was like writing movies and writing television shows, I was really preparing myself to write for theme parks, which was great because none of my other classmates wanted to do that. So perfect. And then because of who my professors were at college and who their connections were, I was lucky enough to be introduced to the right people over in Universal Studios Japan. They reached out and they were like, hey, we need writers. Do you have any students who like writing for theme parks? And they said, yes. So thank goodness, I was able to make that connection. Like a week later, I was flown out to Japan for my interview, and I spent my spring break there in the office doing tasks and assignments and going to sumo competitions. And it was amazing. And I had a job offer by the time I got back. So that made the last 3 months of grad school so slow. I did not want to work on my thesis. I was like, no, I've got a job now. I don't need this anymore. I finished it, by the way, and I passed. So anyways, so I moved out to Japan in 2018, and we're gonna actually take a few steps back now, because although I say I'm a writer, that's a very confusing title, because writers can write, books or scripts or journalism or nonfiction. So what my actual title, what I say that I am, is a narrative designer. And a narrative designer is exactly what it sounds like. It is designing the narrative. It's basically the step before you script anything. Or in the case of theme parks, a lot of it is just narrative design, because when you walk into a theme park, the world is alive around you, story surrounds you, you're invited to read signs and explore more. So narrative designers are the people who basically write out the story. They write out the backstory for these lands, or for these roller coasters, or for these VR experiences, and help bring them to life. And I do also end up writing the script when it gets to the scripting portion. Not all narrative designers do it, but I still like to write scripts. So I moved out to Japan in 2018, and I was immediately thrown into work. I don't know if anybody here has heard of the anime Sailor Moon, but my very first job in Japan was to write a Cinema 4D 10-minute attraction for the IP Sailor Moon. And IP, by the way, means intellectual property. So Mickey Mouse is Disney's IP. And it was an incredible experience. Japanese work culture is very, very different from America. It is much, much more formal over there. An example I can give to you is they have a business card, like basically ceremony, where the most senior work associate gives the junior work associate their business card, and you give it with two hands, and then the junior associate does it back, and then you can't put it in your pocket. You have to put it out on your desk or out on the table so that everybody can see that you've made that business connection. And I was so nervous the first time I did it. My hands were like shaking as I tried to hand over my business card. I was so worried about offending work colleagues over there. And I don't think I did, so good. So back to work. When it came, I'm gonna take you a little bit through what it was like developing Sailor Moon, because another thing that a lot of people don't realize is what it's like to build a theme park attraction. And in this case, we had 14 months to develop a new story and new media for this big, big theater. I don't know if anybody here has been to Universal Studios in Orlando, but they have the same theater that shows the Shrek Cinema 4D show right now. It's the same theater, but over on the other side of the world, and playing Sailor Moon instead of Shrek. So developing a Cinema 4D is actually very interesting, because although it is a movie, you think of it as a play. So the screen on the wall does not exist. The world is supposed to come out into the theater. And that's why you're wearing 3D glasses and everything is floating in front of you, or your seats might move when something on the screen shakes. So it's very much like an attraction. And in fact, the programmers over in Japan who would program the seat effects would make it so intense sometimes that I would be thrown from the seat. I'd almost fall out of it. So they really treated it almost like a roller coaster instead of a slightly more passive experience. So that first project was incredible. I wrote this, I wish I brought my script in. I have this script that we used with the actual voice actors who have been voicing these characters since the early 90s. And for those of you who don't know, Sailor Moon is a very, very popular anime and manga. in Japan. I read somewhere actually that Sailor Moon has more websites dedicated to her than Mickey Mouse, which, if you can imagine, is probably a crazy high number. But so even though I would write the script and I would write all of the documents that the designers would see, because we were working in Japan and our audience was going to predominantly be Japanese, and our voice actors were also Japanese, the way that it worked was I would write the script in English, and then translators would translate it into Japanese. However, when you have a direct translation, it often does not sound natural to whichever native speaker is reading it. So what we would do, and I would do it for Japanese translations. I would do it for English translations, and then Japanese writers would do it for Japanese translations. So our Japanese writers would go through the script, and we would say massage the language to sound a bit more natural, and to make sure that the jokes played out and that it was going to be easily understood by a Japanese audience. And I actually thought that was very cool. Honestly, at first, I was a little sad that the stuff I was writing, that I wouldn't understand it when I would see it in the theater or when I would go on the attraction. That was a little bit like, oh, it'd be cool to like hear the words and understand them and know that I wrote them. But there wound up being something that was so cool about watching, Japanese guests react to the dialogue. And even though I wrote it, and I don't understand it, I can just like tell what part they're at based on the reactions. Like, oh, they're laughing, so that must be the joke right there. Or, oh, they gasped, this must be when the villain said this thing. So I thought that was very cool. And of course, as a writer, when you're working in a country and you're writing for an audience who does not speak your language, you have to put special consideration into, okay, how can I tell this story with as few words as possible? Like, let's cut out language as much as we can, and let's make this storytelling more environmental and more embedded in the scenery and in the set pieces. And then that way, we don't even have to worry about translation. It's a concept in a story that can be easily understood, even if it's not being read or heard. And that's what most theme parks really strive to do is, as great as it is to direct attention and to make sure that people understand story, there's something so wonderful about just planting fun Easter eggs throughout a park. For example, if you go to Star Wars Land in Disney, if you're a hardcore fan, and I'm honestly not a hardcore fan, I really don't know a lot about Star Wars, but I've been to that park with Star Wars fans, and they have a completely different experience than I do because they know Star Wars and they know those Easter eggs. And although I have a good time, they have an incredible time because they are just discovering things all day long that are callbacks to the movie and to the animated series. So that's what's really cool about it. It's non-linear storytelling. You can discover it whenever you happen to stumble upon it. You don't need every facet of information to understand what you're experiencing, but it's there to enhance it should you find it. And I just rambled about that a lot, so I'll move on. That was like the very, very geeky side of me, just talking about story. So anyways, the longer that I worked in Japan, the more and more attractions that I got to work on, as well as working on cinema 4D attractions. I got to work on a roller coaster, which was very fun. I got to work on seasonal dining experiences, and my favorite project that I got to work on while I was there was their Halloween event called Halloween Horror Nights, and they have the event in Orlando every year, so I loved going to it in America, and it was very, very cool to work for it on the other side of the world and in a different culture where they consider different things scary than we might consider scary, over in, on the western side of the planet. And that was absolutely incredible. Where are we with time? I want to make sure. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you, Sunny. So, so as we were working in Japan, I talked about what it was like to work with Sailor Moon, and that's when you are working with intellectual property that you don't own. And what that means is that you really have to charm people in meetings to convince them that, for example, Sailor Moon or Mickey Mouse, although we wouldn't do work with Mickey Mouse, that's Disney, but like I'm trying to think of an American IP that's a bit more recognizable. So for example, Snoopy, Peanuts, the comic book strip, we work a lot with Peanuts. So Snoopy would be in the park and you have to convince the creators of Snoopy, who also love this character and want to make sure that we're doing right by, their baby, that we have an experience that Snoopy is worthy of. And we have to explain, this is why we can only have this type of Snoopy experience here and nobody else can experience it in any part of the world. And that's obviously for a character I know very well, but when you work in Japan, you are also working on stories and with characters you've never heard of before. We worked with a lot of anime, and I don't know if this audience, I don't know if anime is a known word, but it's Japanese animation. And if you have any grandkids or you have any kids even, just ask them if they watch any anime. They probably do. It's very, very popular in America. But I personally did not grow up watching a whole lot of anime. So it was definitely an experience to all of a sudden have to work with these characters and these stories that I literally had to become an expert overnight. I would feel so bad. I would be watching anime at my desk in the office because I'm like, it's like trying to cram for a test. Like we have a meeting to talk about a new Cinema 4D we want to make, and we need to bring them a story that makes sense in this world. So I had, I'd see managers walk by my desk like, why are you watching this? Like, I promise it's for work. I got permission. It's okay to do this. So that was definitely an experience. And I'm actually, I had a very nice segue in my slides, but it's going to be a little less clean without any visual images. But I'm going to transition now to actually living in Japan as opposed to just working in Japan. And when I was trying to think of what to talk about, I really wanted to share more stories about, the places that I went to and the unique Japanese experiences that anybody can have over there. But the truth of the matter is that the last, I would say, 8 or 9 months of my time in Japan, it wasn't normal. We got hit by the pandemic. It was very different from what I hear dealing with the pandemic out in Japan as it was to dealing with it in America. And so my time there, it almost feels like it got cut short, even though it didn't get cut short. I was there for quite a bit longer than I thought I was going to be there for. But I mean, we were in quarantine. We didn't really get to go places. We didn't. Time very much felt as if it stopped. We stopped working in the office, so we were just in our apartments, and it was a very different experience. But at the same time, I feel very much happy with the fact that I experienced the first part of the pandemic over there. And I will get into that soon, but let me talk about some of the non-pandemic stuff first, that if you go to Japan now, you too can have this experience and it's amazing. So for those who don't know, Japan is one of the most efficiently run societies I have ever seen. An example is that their train schedule is always approximate. And if a train is even 10 seconds late, the conductor has to make like an apology to the passengers because 10 seconds late. Absolutely not. So so everything runs super on time there, which I loved because I run super on time and I don't really believe always in being fashionably late. So I really appreciated that. And you would go to the train station and it was amazing because they had line indicators for where you should stand in line to wait to get into your train car. And I kid you not, people followed the signs. It was incredible. Like you just, oh, it was amazing. And I really do think that it helped just make life so much more efficient there. Just people very much follow the rules. And that's not to say that, and I'm not saying major rules, I'm saying small rules like don't litter, don't jaywalk. There are technically no repercussions for jaywalking. It's not illegal, but people just don't do it and it doesn't happen. So it's not an issue. And that was like one of the first things I was warned when I was moved there, like, hey, just so you know, I know Americans like to jaywalk. Don't do it. On speaking of efficiency, as I'm sure this is not new, and this is probably not going to be new information, Japan is a workaholic country. The way that office politics go is that it could be 7 p.m. and you are done for the day. You have no more work to do. But if your boss is still in the office, then you are still in the office. And apparently you're like trying to find ways to pass the time or to look busy, like organizing your drawers or your staplers or something. And then finally, once your boss leaves, you feel like you can leave. And I don't speak from my own experience, I should say. I was very fortunate to work in an office that was very, had a lot of mixed cultures. And I especially had a manager who was very much like, when it is not office time, don't be here, go home, like have a life out of work, which I very, very much appreciated because it can really go either way in this industry. On one hand, it can just be a standard office job where you go and then you leave and you have your time off, but a lot of people also like to just stay and work and work and work. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm not that person. I need to go home. I need to reset if you want the best work out of me. In Japan, I'm trying to think of how to say this. So they have a very big issue with, there's a Japanese word and the literal translation is work to death. And it is something that happens a lot. Either people work so hard that they make themselves really, really sick, or they work so hard that they become mentally very sick. And it's a very, very unfortunate phenomena in Japan that the government is very, very much trying to battle right now. And what they do is that at least once a month on a random Wednesday, there's a government sanctioned holiday where you do not go into the office and you have the day off. And it's an attempt to encourage workers to not work so hard. And I don't know how effective it is. I know it's still very much a big issue in Japan. But anyways, on a happier note, for those who insist on going and working, one of the most incredible things in Japan are the vending machines. There is a vending machine on every block, and these vending machines do have soda and water, but more importantly, they have coffee and tea. And even more importantly, you can choose if it's iced or hot. So during the summer, you have iced tea or iced coffee, and it's great. And then during the winter, because it does get very cold there, you can get hot coffee, hot tea, or even hot soup. And it makes life so easy. I did not own a coffee maker for like my first year in Japan just because I didn't need it. I walked outside my door and I put in, 50 yen and I had coffee. And they also, we call them convenience stores. The term in Japan is konbini. So I call convenience stores konbinis here too now by accident because they're the same thing in my head. But they have 7-Elevens over there. They have so many 7-Elevens, and they have other convenience stores. And these are the most incredible convenience stores you have ever seen. They have groceries if you need to go grocery shopping, but they also have fully cooked meals. If you need an extra dress shirt, if you got coffee and you just need to run into a convenience store, you can buy a dress shirt quickly, or you can buy some stockings. If you need office supplies, you can get office supplies, cleaning supplies, anything that you could have needed. The convenience stores there had it. And I actually think that that might be what I miss the most, are the convenience stores, because man, they just made life so easy, and they were everywhere. There was one on every block. And I know this must be so boring to hear about. I understand, but I wish that I could have made this VR experience for everybody, so that I could have given you a tour around a convenience store, because I guarantee you, if I had done that, you would be booking your next flight to Japan. Although don't go yet. Things are not going great over there. Give it 6 months. So anyways, convenience stores and vending machines are the backbone of that country. And I don't care what anybody else says. But moving along with convenience, they also they have Shinkansens, or bullet trains, over there. Well, when my family came to visit me, we took the bullet train to get to Tokyo. And normally that's like a 5-hour car ride, and it was 2.5 hours on bullet train. It was so easy, and you just arrive to the station 10 minutes before the train leaves, and it really like just makes travel incredible. And then the train itself is so smooth. You can just put your cup of coffee down, and it's not going to budge the entire time. It was fantastic. And I mean, the tourist industry over there is just insane. They have hospitality and lodging options like anywhere else in the world. They have robot hotels where the front desk is exclusively run by robots. I actually stayed in one in Tokyo, and it was prehistoric themed. So I was checked in by a robotic velociraptor who spoke 4 or 5 languages, which was very, very cool. The mattresses weren't that great, but I don't think that's why you go to these hotels. They also have capsule hotels, and it would look really cool, the pictures I had, but they imagine a hallway and little cubbies, and then you just open up these cubbies, and it's big enough for a person and a bed, and they're super cheap lodging options. If you're just spending 24 hours in the city or something, it makes it very, very easy to just have a last minute reservation somewhere, and then you're good for the night. It's safe. Oh, which is another thing. Japan is an incredibly safe country. I don't think I've ever lived anywhere where I felt okay being outside at 2 a.m. Not that I find myself outside at 2 a.m. often, but I would be outside at 2 a.m. in Japan because other people were too. And if they weren't, then you were still safe. I thought that was very cool. I'd never lived anywhere where I could just be okay outside like that before. And more importantly, just feel safe. It was incredible. So I know that we've only got 30 minutes left. And I know that we have Q&A and technically in 15 minutes, but I'm also happy to open it up now. I'm sure that questions will get me like talking longer and about more stuff to elaborate on. So is that okay, Sunny? Awesome.
Well, I can start us off with a question. I'm wondering if you had any other Americans working with you.
Yes, absolutely. So like I said, I worked in a very multicultural office. My manager was American. His manager was American. Other managers were Japanese. I worked with a bunch of people who were from the UK. I worked with people who were from South Korea. I mean, it was fascinating. It was so cool working with so many people, and it definitely made the office such a different type of environment than it would have been if it had just been, mostly American or mostly Japanese. Like there was just And what was also very cool was that everybody pretty much was coming from other theme parks. We had people who used to work at Disney as Imagineers there, and people who used to work at Universal Creative, people who worked over at theme parks in China. I mean, I had never really considered that when you are in this business, if you want to, your life could literally be that you just every few years you move to a different country to open or to work on a new theme park. And what a cool life. One of the managers, she'd lived in China before she was in Japan, and she would always talk about, but I really just miss my house in America. I just want to go home. And so you definitely it's a very cool experience, but a lot of the people, I don't even know if they knew that they were going to be doing this for this long of a time. But yeah, so to answer your question, we worked with a bunch of other Americans.
I see there the question from Toby. She's wondering if you're working at a theme park now.
Yes, I am working at a theme park right now. So I have joined the ranks of freelance writers. So I don't work for just one theme park now. I have my services available on my website, and people will reach out to me through my website or through LinkedIn. And what I advertise myself as is a show writer and a narrative designer. So people can look at my website and see that I can write high-level narratives and concepts for attractions, or I can write scripts. I can write film scripts. I can write television scripts. I can write prose. But right now, I'm actually contracted with a few places. I'm writing and this is actually this is a new venture for me. I recently became a game writer, which I never thought I was going to do, but I'm having so much fun. So I'm working for a mobile game studio, writing a choose your own story type adventure. So I've been writing the script for that. And I'm also contracted with 2 different themed entertainment design firms right now. And for one of them, I'm doing more standard theme park work where I'm writing narratives and stories for roller coasters or dark attractions or cinema 4Ds or storylines for theme park lands. And then for the other company right now, I'm actually helping develop more written content for online. So not attractions, more for boosting an online presence and pushing, not pushing, but more along with their brands. And I can't talk much about it, unfortunately. I'm always under NDA for my projects when they're ongoing, so I can give a little bit of information, but I have to kind of be a little bit careful with what I share. So yes, I am currently working for theme parks.
When did you start working for theme parks? You did the Disney, you worked at Disney, right? What was that like?
Yeah,
Share your experience working for Disney.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I can't believe I haven't talked more about Disney. I usually will find any reason to talk about the Disney College program. Side note, I'm not an ambassador for them, but I might as well be because I love the Disney College program. If you have any relatives who are looking to apply for the Disney College program, feel free to send them my way and I will tell them why they should or should not do it. Because not everybody, obviously, always enjoys it. But I started working for Disney in 2015, and I completed 2 internships while I was there. My first internship, I did merchandise at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and it was such a cool experience. I got to talk to really cool guests all day, every day. I really, really liked my coworkers. And I actually auditioned to be a character performer as that internship was ending and I got accepted. So I extended my internship and I transitioned over to character entertainment. We don't have any kids in this meeting, right? I don't think so. Okay, cool. Then I can say I was, as we say, friend with Mickey and Minnie at Disney World. So I got to, you know, have that experience, which was just probably one of the most magical things in the world. And I would absolutely do that again in a heartbeat. So that's when I started working in theme parks, but that was still during my internship. I wasn't necessarily doing anything that had to do with the degree that I was really trying to get afterwards. But actually, they do have a Disney internship for show writing. And this was actually the internship that really, really turned me on to show writing and made me realize that I wanted to pursue other opportunities similar to it. And I applied twice for it and I didn't get accepted the first time, but I did get accepted the second time on the same day that I got my job offer with USJ. So I had to say no because I wanted to live in Japan and have a full-time job. The internship was only for 6 months and oh my goodness, my computer's not plugged in. I'm so sorry. But so I started working at theme parks in 2015 to 2016, but I didn't start my current professional venture with theme parks until June of 2018 when I started with Universal Studios Japan.
If nobody has another question, I'll take one. Amy, I'm wondering if you're in touch with anybody from Japan. And if so, are they still there? Did they go back to their countries?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question because I realized I also didn't talk about living in Japan during the pandemic, but I still have many friends who are in Japan. I know a few people who did end up leaving, unfortunately. As with a lot of theme parks around the world, there were a lot of cuts that were made. The theme parks really took a hit from this. I mean, Disneyland was closed for over a year, which is absolutely insane. It used to be a big deal when they would close Disneyland for a day. So it's definitely been very different. And USJ has been very lucky that they've been able to hold on to the people that they've held on to. And a lot of that I definitely attribute to the fact that the department that I was in is very small. We technically were hired by Universal Studios Japan, not by Universal Studios who would own all the other parks. So we were employees of Universal Studios Japan. So that was definitely a saving grace for a lot of people. A lot of the managers, really went to bat for their employees to make cases as to why people should and needed to keep their jobs. So I do have a lot of friends who are still living there, and it's actually very interesting because when the pandemic started, getting people to wear masks in Japan was not an issue at all because, as with many Asian cultures, wearing a mask when you are feeling sick is something that has been practiced for many, many years. So, I mean, before the pandemic, you would see people walking around wearing masks. And something I didn't know was apparently a lot of people would wear masks when they didn't want to wear makeup. So even if they weren't sick, it was just a way to cover their face, which I totally get now. So at the start of the pandemic, I would say that if America was down here, Japan was right here. We definitely did not experience the same extremes that America experienced, but it has definitely switched, especially in the past handful of months. I was talking to a friend in Japan and he's an expat, he's an American. And because he's there on his work visa, he will be able to get the vaccine, but he told me it's probably not going to be until 2022. So they are, and I honestly really don't know the politics over there, but it appears that people are unable to get the vaccines. And they're being pushed out very, very slowly over there, which I'm sure is not because somebody wants it to be slow. I understand that there's a lot of other things in play, but unfortunately that's the situation. And a year ago, they had their lockdown I'd say a few weeks after America had their lockdown. So this was back in March, April. And that first lockdown lasted in Japan for about a month. Less than a month ago, Japan went into their second lockdown a year after their first lockdown. So things have really gotten very bad out there. And what a lot of it has been attributed to is because this is such a workaholic country, a big activity that a lot of hard workers do after work is they go out and they drink, and that's how they blow off steam. And Japan did not make, they didn't make it so that you had to close down restaurants or stop serving alcohol. They made it so that that was up to the restaurant or the bar's discretion. They didn't do that. And so apparently that is part of the reason why Japan is really struggling right now, because the nightlife did not stop when it should have stopped. And as a result, they are now back in another lockdown, and restaurants have been ordered to stop serving alcohol at this point. Which, if you have been to Japan and you know Japan, if Japan says stop serving alcohol, then things must be getting pretty bad. So I do have friends out there, and they're struggling. One of them is actually moving back pretty soon. And I mean, even those who aren't thinking about moving back, it's a very different landscape. Japan is insisting that they will still hold the Olympics in a few months, or I guess next month, and next month or the month after. So it's very hard to imagine how that will happen. So I would say that to live in Japan during the beginning of the pandemic was something that at the time I was like, I felt very glad to have been there with those people. It felt like a good place to be. And, you know, my heart hurts just seeing like my friends and my coworkers over there who are struggling and who I know had been trying so hard to follow the guidelines that they were given, and the way they put it, and I kind of get it. They look at America and they see how just so many Americans are getting vaccinated compared to Japan especially, and there's just this feeling of frustration of, oh, can't you just send us over a few vaccines, like just sneak it through customs for us, come on. So it's been rough there for them.
Amy, we have another question from Janet. She's asking, did you go to Japan speaking Japanese? And she's wondering, was it necessary, and how fluent did you become?
Not fluent at all. So when I first heard about the job opportunity, I opened up my Duolingo app and I started the Japanese lessons, and kudos to anybody who has been able to get through Duolingo and able to retain the information, because languages are not my strong suit. So no, I moved to Japan not knowing Japanese, and I still do not know Japanese. I was very fortunate that where I lived was in the middle of a city, and a lot of the signs were in English. A lot of the people who I worked with or who I was friends with were bilingual, and they were really able to help us get around. And also when a larger company moves you to a different country, they understand that, you are there for them, but you are now in a very unfamiliar situation in an unfamiliar country. So they set you up with people to help you figure out appointments, help with furniture shopping, help make the flight arrangements. So I was very lucky that USJ made sure that we were able to get around and that we had help. And we definitely started off asking for a lot of help at first, but I was very pleasantly surprised by, I just attribute it to the fact that the signage in Japan was just so easy to understand. Before long, we were getting around on the trains, and at first I was so scared to take those trains. I was like, I'm just going to blink and I'm not going to know where I am. I'm not going to know how to get back. But it was surprisingly easy to get around. And I like to think that as time went on and people came to visit me, that I appeared like a well-seasoned traveler there. And I also didn't mention this, but it was very big. I did not move to Japan alone. one of my best friends from grad school who was also a writer. She and I both bonded over the fact that we wanted to work in theme parks and we very much want to do similar things in the same field. So when the job was initially open, they were looking for more than one person. And I have to continue to thank Emma, my friend, over and over, because she had her first interview with our manager and she name dropped me, which led to him contacting me. So she's not watching right now. She's in Japan. It is 3 a.m. there for her. But so we actually moved there together, and that made it so much less scary than it would have been, especially because we got stuck in South Korea on our flight on the way over. We spent the night at an airport. We just didn't eat because that involved figuring out the money, and we did not have enough energy to figure out money. So, and it's not necessary. If you plan on living in Japan for more than a few years, then there is a lot of merit to learning the language, especially if you want to work there. I was lucky that I was in an office that had an incredible team of translators who just made our jobs so much easier, but that wouldn't necessarily be every office. We were very, very spoiled. So, and they actually, I had a few coworkers who were very dedicated to learning Japanese, and they did a great job. I had a few coworkers who were enrolled in classes, but you could tell they really they didn't want to learn the language. I think they felt like everyone else is learning Japanese. I guess I should learn Japanese, but it's a hard language to learn. And that's not to say shame on them for not learning. I didn't learn it either. You say you're going to start taking classes, but the reality is you're still in Japan as a full-time employee. You have office hours. Sometimes you work overtime. And at the end of the day, I was far more interested in going home and going to sleep than I was going to a class. So I did not learn a lot of Japanese. I know a little bit. I know enough to, please, thank you, where is this? Take me here. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me and I'm sorry are, I would say, two of the expressions in Japanese you really, really need to know, because it is a country where everybody just does a lot of apologizing. And personally, I loved it because I also do a lot of apologizing, and I finally felt like people weren't looking at me weird for just saying sorry over there. Because I just, sometimes you feel like you need to say something. You can't help it. You'll feel bad if you don't say it. So I really appreciated that everybody was as over apologetic as me over there. That made me feel immediately at home.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other questions before we conclude today's program? Well, thank you so much, Amy, for joining us. I know it was a pleasure for a lot of us to hear you and see you, although you're from far away and not in Savannah. We feel like you were here with us today, and we're really thankful.
Thank you guys so much for having me on and for listening to me. This was such a treat. I don't get to talk about it as much as I like to, so this was very lovely. And if anybody does ever have any questions, if you're planning for a trip to Japan, if you want to learn how to say excuse me and sorry in Japanese, I know those two words very well.
Thank you, Amy. And I would love to invite everybody to join us next week and every Thursday, 1 p.m. Next week, we'll have with us the JWB Jewish Chaplains Council for a special pre-Memorial Day program. I hope to see all of you there. Bye.
Hi, good to see you, Amy.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Amy.
Sunny. Thank you.
You're a great grandparent.